I'm coming to you live from still outside Goshen Historic Track. And finally today something happened that I'm very happy, whom I'm going to keep anonymous. An older gentleman who knows of everything that's gone on to a certain point, the nonsense that's happened over the last 3 years. I brought him up to speed on, really what he wasn't, and he didn't fully understand why I do what I'm doing and how it's gotten to be so vicious. And people yelling over the fence, now me yelling back, blah, blah, blah. That's all bullshit and nonsense. The thing when I see sore horses, I'm never going to stop because I was always that way, but I didn't report people. But it's gotten to this point now where, I want to make an example of them. And this was an older, wiser gentleman that I could actually speak to who knows everybody over there. And one name that really came up, and I have thought this since the beginning, is what happened with Bobby Dill. Now, let me explain to you. I've known Bobby since I'm a child here. Bobby was the blacksmith here. He shod my first horse that I had that my parents owned. First horse that I ever had shot as a racehorse. He shot all my horses for I don't know how long, my babies back then when I was a kid. Always got along. Always. I knew his brother. He had the tack shop. I used to go down there, speak with his dad. When they had the blacksmith shop at the corner down by the Hall of Fame. Never a negative. To the point where later in the years, when I was working at Golden Shoe, we were having some concrete poured for a couple of wash stalls. And the truck pulls up, and it was Bobby running the truck. He'd gotten away from the business after, whatever. Never a negative. But one thing I'm going to say is, in all the years that I knew him training, I never, ever saw Bobby as someone who used any kind of drugs on horses. Now, here's where it gets, and again, this other guy out here that's running his fucking mouth, all right? Sometimes, and I said this to this gentleman just now, I said, I have tried to reach out. I even yelled to, the other day in that nasty weather, I said to Ray, as he went by, and he slowed down. I said, this is what started all this shit. Do you understand? I said, it never should have happened. I've been repeating about how anyone that's being caught in the crosshairs of everything, that the result of me putting out the invoices, the stuff from Seth Fishman, all that crap, which never in my life did I imagine ever doing. It's just a result of a culmination of things that kept happening. This gentleman didn't know about Ray and Mark Ford attacking Dave Yarrick over me. He says, why would anybody do that? I said, exactly, why would anybody do that? He said, over giving you money. I said, they're just trying to get to me for whatever reason. I said, but it did start over me complaining about the ice here and vocally. I'm sorry, I had my horses here. Could have been handled differently, but it wasn't. They tried to make an example out of me, and look at where it's led to. He says, but do you think that this is helping your cause? I said, well, a couple of years ago, if you want to call it my cause, if I was trying to get back in the game, I said, how could I ever get back in the game again if I wanted to? Even as friends, I said, there's a woman over here who, you talk about bad things happening, lost her husband, out of nowhere, that I can't even go over and offer my condolences to her. And if she ever needed somebody, and I got this through to her, that if she needed someone to, handle her barn or something, she had things to do because her life changed drastically, unannounced, I would ride her horses for anything. I can't do those things anymore. That's the only thing that bothers me. But again, as for the industry, I think it's screwed. But he says, why? He says, but look at how you're hurting harness racing. I said, I'm not trying to hurt harness racing. I'm trying to rid it of the dirtbags who are affecting the little guys that can't compete against the dirtbags who just continue to race. And this is where I said, where I don't understand. And I said to him, he says, do you really think, Bobby? He says, because I'm telling you, that he did not, and he's been railroaded. And I said, it's the first thing that crossed my mind, that how in the name of God, and it was only one horse, is Bobby Dill guilty of administering cobalt. Now, again, would it make me a hypocrite siding with someone who's tested positive, failed to split sample? Anything is possible. I don't know how, but I still find it, and this is what really gets me. How many people have tested positive recently in the state of New York for cobalt? And the ones who have, and there were a few, how many have gotten 10 years? And why would it be 10 years for a man who's 70? Because I looked this up the other day, like when this guy Scott, and this is what I mean about people stepping out of line and running their fucking mouths. I'm going to report everything as it has been reported to on the USTA, because that's what's been reported. He finally lost that appeal, and now they are enforcing the 10-year suspension. The horses were immediately, and this is where I said, you got to be smarter, and maybe I'm wrong, but when I saw him out here jogging the horses on Monday, I'm like, come on, man, here we go again. Is there a better way? You know, the idea of the punishment is you can't race, you can't be having an interest. Is there, I mean, I just can't get over the thought in the back of my mind, did Bobby really do this? And I did bump into him a few weeks ago, and this is where this guy Scott Jensen steps out of line and should just mind his own fucking business. I know he's friends with him and he's been riding the horses for him, but don't immediately jump to the conclusion that I'm the enemy, because I could actually help him. At least get it out there that there's more to this that nobody's talking about. And I'm going to have the questions of like, okay, where did this cobalt come from? According to this gentleman, that never even looked at the levels. The level was so high, it would have put the horse on the ground. So these are to look into. I know a lot of people that I considered friends in harness racing that were found guilty of things that were bad. Do I hate them? No. Do I want to hurt them? No. Do I want to call them out and say, listen, what the fuck were you thinking? Yes. Like my closest friend who did a 180 on me. So, like I said to this man, I said, I have never fully been able to absorb that Bobby Dill gave this horse cobalt, and why was it only one, and the amounts now, what they were tested at. Could there be more to it? And then when I called the judges at Monticello Raceway the other day, and I asked them, I said, you know, are you aware? And I have it recorded that they are aware, and that they tried to work something out. So now if that's the case, then that should be, everybody should be accommodated fairly. The person who I know, I feel bad for him, because if he didn't do this, and again, the guy is up there, he's out here, he's worked his whole life. And I mean, I know this, his body's bent into a pretzel. You know, when I saw him in Quick Stop that day, I said, Bobby, come on. And he didn't want to talk about it. And I'm sure he, you know, for obvious reasons and who I am. But when I said that to him, I meant it. I said, you didn't give that shit, did you? And he says, Mike, I can't talk about it. He walked away. I'm like, okay, you know, I get it. Can't implicate himself anymore either way or speak to me because of who I am and what I do now. But I don't know if it would hurt his case. And like I said to this gentleman, and I said this about a few people, he says, a lot of these people were my friends. And it also came up in a conversation the other day that what I miss about the business is, I said it to Sean Wiles is who I said it to. I forgot I called Sean. And I said, Sean, I'm not trying to hurt the track. I said, Bobby and that family is part of Monticello Raceway. That old tack shop, that was Dill's. I've known these guys forever. I said, I just find it hard to believe, how this is being handled. None of it makes any sense. Did they drop the ball? If you got New York State Gaming saying, listen, we're not trying to punish the guy, the horse is going to be allowed to race, then why are you punishing the guy? And especially, I said, I still don't understand the 10 years. And I said, it's gotten to, what bothers me the most, again, is that I said, imagine if I decided, or somehow USTA renewed my membership, and I decided to come race, and I said, the place would part like the Red Sea when I walked in, like Satan coming up out of the fucking ground. I said, but there are people that I miss. I miss the racing. I miss just hanging out, talking to my friends, acting like idiots, racing the horses. I said, if there was ever any one thing that I would do, I said, I would just want to paddock a horse. I don't want to be involved. Get on the racetrack again once or twice. Of course I miss the game. And there's a lot of people I miss. But this man this morning, what he said to me, and it kind of rang a bell with me. Is there collateral damage with what I do? Yeah. And then I said to him, I said, but look what they did to me. I said, maybe you don't understand the whole story. I said, but there are people in the business, one who's right here, who did everything he could to ruin me, business-wise. I lost my horses. I was thrown off the track for complaining about the ice. What else do I have to do to get a fair hearing? I've gone to the USTA. I've gone to everybody. Then I get calls like 2 years ago when Dave Yarrick got attacked in the paddock at Meadowlands Racetrack with Mark Ford over me. Where does it stop? Now they've taken it outside the industry that it's affecting me personally, away from the business. I didn't go into all the things about the phone calls and to the place, the owners of the farm where I was, stabled and living at the time, the threatening phone calls, that they were scared. That's the reason I left the farm up the street here on Axworthy Lane, to protect them. I put them in a bad position because of my involvement with what I was doing with harness racing. And at the time, that was just working with some rescue horses. So where does it stop? I even told him about the time when our friend up the street there tried to contact my 17-year-old daughter at the time on Facebook, and friend requested her. And he goes, why would you? He said again, this guy, why would he do that? I'm going, why would he do that? I said, he's just to get my goat. Of course he knows my daughter's going to tell me what he did. It just shows you what kind of people they are. Those are the people that there's no loss there. But I said, you go back there. I said, you're going to go back over there? And he says, yeah. I said, you ask anybody before all this shit started, what did Petrelli ever do to anybody? Nothing. Whenever there was an issue or something or somebody needed help, I offered. He says, didn't Bobby help you with equipment when you first got back in the business? I said, no, that was actually Crivlin. Okay, because he was next to me. And when I showed up with that horse to know the first night, my owner had ordered all new sets of harness and everything. It just hadn't arrived yet. So I said, and why would people do that? I said, because Mike Petrelli was never a threat to anybody. And I said to him, because he asked me, he says, well, weren't you gone? And now I said, well, he says, didn't you get away from here? I said, yeah, I was taking care of Dreamland last year. And, I knew that was temporary. So I never let go of this place. And that's it. See, the cops are coming because they're angry at what happened. So I said I never let go of what I had here because I protected myself, and I'm like, once that's all done, where am I going to go next? I came right back here. I said this morning, I'm hanging out the window. I feed my squirrels every day. They see me. This guy, Scott Jensen, waves me down. So I went down to the track. I don't care about the nonsense banter of, yelling back and forth, because I tell these guys, if you got anything to say it to me. Come and speak to me. And then you'll hear both sides of the story. You'll hear things like, you think I want to hurt any of the regular guys here? Guys I've known for 50 years like Bobby? Of course not. I remember we sat on trunks, or while he's shoeing my babies, listened to his dad talking about horses in the 40s and 50s. That's the way I came up in the game. So what I'm going to do is, and this is what I told him, if you go back there, pass it on, that I'm open to any of these guys. Talk to me. This could end with a simple, he goes, oh, that's the other thing. He says, so why didn't you try to contact, Steve Jones or whatever? I said, I did. And his exact words were, the decision has been made and cannot be changed. I said, so what am I supposed to do? I said, and then it escalated into I couldn't get stalls anywhere else. All of a sudden, I'm blackballed. All of a sudden, I got Russell Williams telling me, you're not going to get in my fucking face. Nobody remembers this shit. You show me what I've done to deserve what I've gotten, which is a time ban from everything in harness racing. So, and he brought up, he says that you've got a lot of anger. I said, why wouldn't I have a lot of anger? What have I done? He said, well, I know you do like to help the horses. Yeah. I said, that's always been. I said, but I've never done it to this point of I'm so out there now that, I'm known as that guy. I said, but don't confuse my love for the sport of harness racing and my care and empathy that I have, the genuine love I have for the standardbreds especially, with I want harness racing destroyed. That's so fucking wrong. I do not want harness racing destroyed. And that's when I pointed out to the track again. I said, do you understand that when I was a kid, I used to take care of this place by myself. I had a bunch of cheap rat horses in the shed row. I was maintaining the track as a child. I learned from good people. I used to start the races. I said, to me, it was a privilege being able to take care of this place that where I got started, and that I look at as, maybe not the cathedral, but it is genuinely the birthplace of the sport that I love. And I got a kick out of it. And now, like I said to him, I said, I can't step foot on it. I said, that comes down to one guy, two. I said, the one guy's over there with the truck with the spreader, because he got all bent out of shape that I kept stopping him, asking him, and I had every fucking right to. My owner paid his bills, his stall rent. They even lied about that. Said I wasn't paying my bills. I never rented any stalls there. My owner did, and he paid in advance. Whole other story. But I think as a horseman, I have every right to say, listen, are you going to plow this shit off here? That's the way I learned. Get the snow off. It's turning to ice. What are you going to do? And then when he handed us the 5-gallon buckets of salt, I got pissed off. I'm like, are you kidding? And then I'll just keep repeating what he said. It'll melt. Well, that may be true. But in the meantime, we got shit to do. And I had a mare that I wanted to get qualified at the Meadowlands that I couldn't train. See, I wasn't used to the new Goshen historic track method of maintenance. I know they're limited, but he was out here till 11 o'clock the other night freeze drying. I don't know if something's changed, but I look at it this way. If there's something you can do about an issue and you don't, that's neglect. And that's sticking it up everybody's ass. I didn't know what the hierarchy was here and how they lean to only one barn. I didn't know. I still don't care. We were paying, and I just wanted a safe facility that I could walk my horses out of my barn, hook up, and jog and train. That was it. That was my entire involvement. Other than that, there's people on the internet, on that specifically on that other forum about harness racing, which I think is just a fucking abomination. On me, the good thing is nobody reads it, so other than maybe 20 fucking scumbags and a couple of decent people. It's more for entertainment. But when it comes to hurting the game, I guess I have gotten to that point where there are people listening, because if you look around, you've got hearings going on in Delaware. You got guys that are kicked out of the countries, of Canada, country of Canada. And then I even hesitate with that now. I'm like, I never wanted to be involved in any of this. It's just escalated to this point. And I was approached by people who had that information, and they saw me as the vehicle, because I'm someone that they've never had before, which is someone who's familiar with the game and all the players involved, and was angry enough to say, well, I got nothing else to lose. And that's where I'm going with this, is I didn't have anything else to lose when it came to harness racing. They blackballed me. Was it spite? At first it was. Now it's become a mission. Once I understood just how bad it is, and how, because of a lot of people that have contacted me, good people, how they're being hurt, things they've seen, things that have happened. Look at the Bogo story, the thing that happened up in Oneida County with Misty Carey, stuff like that. Horses that are being abused. I just had a guy the other day trying to retrieve his mother's horses, from a training center up here in Orange County. They blocked him, said he owed money. The horses were in bad shape, blah, 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 blah. I got involved, remedied that. That may be a live stream soon. We'll see. I'm not sure. But I like being the guy helping regular people, but it doesn't do anything for me. I've been accused of grifting. Grifting? Where am I making money off this? Are you fucking kidding me? I've put myself into a corner. Everything I've done is out of pocket. So the way I left it with this older gentleman was, because he said it again, well, what would I said, do me a favor and take this back to them. They know me. They could call me. If they said, listen, meet me where? Meet us wherever. I would. And I would just say, the conversation would be so fucking simple and quick. I'd say, why? You all know what happened. Give me one good reason that you carried it so far to make an example of me. And now look at where it's got us. People screaming over fences, out windows, you name it. People I've never met. Maybe I have and don't realize it, but because before all this happened, that's where I was going with this. Oh, nobody ever knew of Petrelli before this. Exactly. Nobody ever knew of Petrelli before this. I did what I did for whoever I was working with. I had my friends. If I had horses myself, or I was working in a barn with someone, I just did my job. We had a laugh, a lot of laughs, took care of the horses, and that was it. I wasn't nosing into other people's barns or anybody else's business. I didn't care who was using what. I didn't know about these drugs, what was in the tubes, what they're injecting horses with. To this day, I don't understand hardly any of it other than this crap that Equistology was selling. If someone asked me, all these people know how to treat a horse, these trainers nowadays. Well, this horse is doing this. She's not finishing the mile. She's sour. This one's bleeding. This one can't breathe. I don't know. I know the basics and that's it. I'll ask a vet, how do you treat it? But I'm not putting this shit in their bodies like fucking blood builders or mega painkillers, these fucking bronchodilators that I don't understand it, and I never will. I don't care. That's not me. Like I said, I told them, I said, just take this back to them. I said, if you see Bobby, tell him to watch, because it can go both ways. But if the attacks stop, my attacks are going to stop. I usually, for the 99% of anything that I do, is in response to something that someone else initiated. I usually just stand there. But when they start yelling over the fence, you heard them the other day, you're a fucking loser living in Section 8 housing. First of all, Section 8 housing is federal. And no, I'm not on any kind of fucking assistance with, I rent an apartment here, dude. Sorry. If that's the best you can do, or I'll gladly meet you and you can tell me the truth. And then I will take the truth here like I offer to everybody else. Since I've changed this to this EAA thing, Alliance LLC, that I do want to hear both sides of the story. I would love to hear enough information that says to me I was right with my first impulse that there's no way that this guy gave this stuff. And what's being done here and why, because I don't trust anybody. Obviously, I have no trust for New York State gaming, because if you remember correctly, I was approached earlier this year in a phone call by one of their presiding judges, Anthony Zubkov, who called me to ask me to back off of Howard Taylor. That's bad enough, but he still has a job and is still employed by New York State Gaming as an associate judge, last I checked. So do I trust the state, that state office? No, not at all. And do they want to give this false semblance of they're accomplishing something by giving a 73-year-old man a 10-year suspension for testing positive for what they call, and I've never really investigated and researched what cobalt really is. I've kind of had an idea. They call it the poor man's EPO. It acts as a blood builder. Okay. But how come just the one horse? You only gave it to this one horse. You know, things, you start to see the holes in the story and tested so high. I don't know. But as for moving forward now, like I said to this gentleman, I said, do you think I want to do this? I don't want to do this anymore. So I've gradually been doing more shit around back around the village again. You know, I'll help people in certain situations that are in trouble in the game. But when it comes to this crap with exposing the dirtbags, what do I gain in the end here? Nothing. Yeah, it was Petrelli. Okay, great. I thought by publicizing what the commissions and the USTA, AGCO, Standard Grid Canada weren't, and just ignoring, would be beneficial. You see how slow they've been moving on it. They don't want to. And again, whatever their reasoning is, never going to understand. We could all dissect it and try to figure out what's the conspiracy behind it all. Where's the money? Are they all tied to each other? You know, you can make that argument easily for a lot of these guys. But what is it going to do in the end? Joe Feraldo spoke, I guess, in front of the board to the state last week, the horse racing board, how the money, you know, and well, I find it ironic and coincidental that Joe Feraldo's talking about how the bigger fish, the whales, are going to eat up the minnows and there's going to be nothing left for the industry. Well, you've been doing that at Yonkers Raceway for years now, in charge of $60 million a year, where you need his permission and Joe Frazier's permission to race at Yonkers Raceway, which I believe, to me, is a conflict of interest. No one party who is nonpartisan to the people who have handed over that state-generated revenue, that being New York State Gaming, should have any single say over $60 million of VLT money that's earmarked for the purses at Yonkers Raceway, and you being able to say, no, you're not allowed to race here. No, you're not allowed to race here. You can race here. Never heard of that before. That's like saying, you know, federally allotted grants are only offered to white people. But the reason that they can do it is because they can get away with it. Nobody's watching them. There's nobody over them that's enforcing whatever these rules are that don't exist, if they exist. So that's it. I hope that gentleman went over there and told him, he's not what you're painting him as, because I never have been. I'm a product of what escalated into what you see now. And I've repeated the story over and over again, and it doesn't change because it's the truth. I said, you want me to stop with this? I said, I could. There's nothing in the end for me. But I said, but if they keep poking at me, I'm going to poke back. Too bad. Do I want to do this? No, I'm over it. In the end, I need to start doing things for myself and moving in another direction. Would it be nice to be able to say, like, if I wanted to? I just can't imagine me walking into any paddock or barn area ever again. There might be some people out there who know me and get it, but I'd have to keep answering to all the ones that think I'm there for, for some other reason, alter reason, which, I'm not going to be judged. They should all understand that for the most part. I try to simplify this and say that the only people that should be upset with me are the ones who are breaking the rules and guilty of everything that I'm talking about. As for everybody else, you should be thinking, Mike's fighting for us because you're the ones who are being affected by the people who are cheating the game and taking advantage of it. Because when they beat you, using the crap that they using the crap that they use on horses, that's them hurting you, not me. That's the simplest way to explain what I've been trying to fight. How I got here is a different story. How I could end it, some people are going to have to admit they were wrong. And I just don't see that ever happening. These people are too proud and too pompous to ever do that. But I'd love for them to come out. They've already had to retract a lot of the statements that they made publicly and letters to people saying, oh, well, no, he didn't owe money here. That was all a big misunderstanding. No, you didn't think I had a big enough mouth to run that out publicly, that you're trying to defame me for whatever fucking reason. Because again, outside the game, nobody cares. But it got loud enough that they had to respond and say, no, Goshen Historic Track, he never owed money here. And he didn't know, but it was because he was, I was too brutal on their employees about the condition of the facility. Well, that I don't apologize for. I was. Take full credit for that. Don't care. And if they can't understand that, well, sorry. There's a lot of horsemen that agreed with me, and now I understand why they wouldn't speak, because they were afraid. But again, that ship has sailed. So here we are. Finally, I appreciate it if that gentleman, I'm not going to mention his name, who approached me, that was the first genuine discussion I've had with anybody directly connected to the people who put me in this position where I am now. And I said, this is the truth. Take it any way you want. It didn't have to go this far. It could have stopped so easily, and they just didn't. What they never expected was me to fight back so hard. I'll leave it at that. Peace. There may be a live stream tomorrow night regarding those horses that were, there was an issue with the owner retrieving this past week here in Orange County. I won't say which farm yet, but we'll get to it. Peace out.